August has ended in the red after putting in a new all-time high price. Now here's a scary statistic for you. We are 33 months into this current cycle. The last time we saw a new all-time high price with a red month was back in December at 25 months into the cycle. Last cycle, which ended in 2021, we saw 28 months with a red month with a new all-time high price. That led to a 55% correction. And the next time we saw a new all-time high with a red month was November 2021 being the cycle top. And that came out at 35 months. So we're treading on thin ice here with the current cycle. But I wanted to get the scary stuff out of the way initially because I think there is still further to go in this cycle, which I'll explain to you in this video why, and you can make up your mind with the direction you think the market's going to take as I discuss the charts and the data for Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, the S&P 500, the US dollar, and of course the real estate cycle. So don't go anywhere, hit the like button if you find value from the content, share it with a friend, and of course subscribe if you're new here. It's your home of macro cycle analysis. As I said, we cover everything here: Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, commodities, and the real estate cycle, which is coming to a peak. Okay, let's kick it off with Bitcoin, looking at the end of the month. As I've said, new all-time high price in August with a red month here. Now, if we turn on a few of the lines, the prior Augusts have seen red, red, red. So we got a confirmation here that we've got another red for this cycle. And I'm looking specifically at this current cycle. What happened next was positive. We got a green September. This was a bear market. That was a red September. So I'm going to focus on the bull markets themselves and also take a look at what August and September did leading into the peak of the bull markets. Like we can see here in 2020, that was a big blow off top move. And then the final peak, which was August, September 2021 into the peak of October and November. So essentially you can see red into green, and this was a bottoming pattern, essentially a turning point for the bull market. And this is looking at Bitcoin specifically. There's a slight difference here with the altcoin markets, which are looking even more positive than where Bitcoin currently sits. And so what I want to look at in today's video is cover everything and then decide for myself, and of course yourself as well, with what I think September is going to do and then the rest of the cycle. So September, I think, is looking pretty interesting, and it might throw a few spanners in the works just in the early part of the month before we get into the later part of the month as well. So August, September, basically red into green, which then was led by October and November that got the move on and pushed the price higher. Keeping September and October in mind, we can count out 35 months from the cycle low. November 2022, 35 months takes us to October 2025. And for the record, 36 months would be November, 37 months is December. So there's obviously a lot of interest in what's going to happen in September, because that could then spell out what happens for Q4, potentially into Q1, something like early part of January 2026. Now, the prior cycles have been 35 months low to high. That was 2021 top. These 2017 top, 35 months as well, low to high. And then the Genesis cycle here, that is 2010 to the peak of November 2013. That was 37 months. So we have all of those time counts to the end of the cycle on record here, 35 months into October, 36, 37. I think it's important to keep watching all of them because at the end of the day, there is no guarantee of which month this is going to peak. If in fact it does peak in any of these, it could keep going. Now, I don't want to leave here with an up, down, sideways scenario. I want to assess what I think is going on and then give myself a roadmap for what potentially comes next. MicroStrategy is an interesting one at this stage as well. Last cycle, it peaked well before the Bitcoin all-time high. So Bitcoin peaked in November 2021. MicroStrategy peaked in February 2021. And if I take it off logarithmic, you can see the extent of the move. Huge top here, big blow-off move earlier on, and then basically faded and couldn't recover any of those gains or barely any of those before failing into the bear market low. Similar this time, we've got a big blow-off top here in November, fair bit of interest that came into the market, And then the last blow off top was July. Well, the last top, not necessarily blow off top, last top, July. And since then, August has been pretty dire for MicroStrategy. So this is on a monthly chart. If we turn on the rest of the indicators, the 50% levels are the key levels to watch here. It's failed once at a 50% extension, which is this tool right here, looking at how the move could continue on. So it's failed there at the July Bitcoin all-time high, putting in a fresh local high for a time being. And then August has been that red month, which has taken out the 3 months prior. So you've got the low of May, low of June, low of July. August is now finished down red. The saving grace here is that it still hasn't broken $280 or the previous lows at around $230. So if MicroStrategy can recover, maybe we could see a continued push here for Bitcoin as well. MicroStrategy doesn't have to recover to a new all-time high for the Bitcoin cycle to continue to hit new fresh prices, but it could just mean that MicroStrategy is going to continue to be weaker leading into the peak of the cycle, and that of course will then come undone for the bear market for BTC. So the short term still got some signs that there's further upside, in particular the cycle analysis that we've been following. So this is the 5 and the 10-year cycle analysis for BTC. Not a bad look here. It's basically been tracking very, very similarly to 2020, which was the COVID year, 2015, which was the accumulation phase for the 2017 cycle. Why are we looking at these? Well, Gann tells us to look at 5 and 10-year cycles, along with many others, but Bitcoin has a short history, so we're using the 5 and the 10. And this is to give us a roadmap for the price structure. So September may not look as good, and I've been talking about how great things are potentially going to be. September, potentially a tough period in the first week, and then the roughly third week, looking around the seasonal date, what we call the seasonal date, around the 20th, 21st of September. But here comes the good news. October seems to be relatively good, and then the cycle there for November. And then if we take a look at December as well, that starts to really kick things along. One step at a time, still 4 months to go in the year. Anything can change in that period. This is the next part that we're most interested in. This is September. And then, of course, into October, which really starts to look like we see some gains. And in amongst all of this, I've still got Bitcoin in the portfolio. However, I am beginning to rotate out of Bitcoin into other assets. I discuss this in more detail with TIA Premium members. There's a ton of courses to learn how to navigate your portfolio through the cycles, just like we talk about with the 18-year cycle, whether it's from crypto, the stock markets, commodities, or the real estate cycle. So if you're interested in that for your long-term portfolios, TIA Premium, links in the video description. What does September show for Bitcoin when we take a look at the forward returns? Here is September, so I'll draw your eye down this column here. Now, September typically is one of the worst months for Bitcoin, only beaten by August and tied with March. We know March is a typically tough period for Bitcoin. Typically stock markets as well. They get a nice run up for January and then sometimes fade for Feb, putting that low for March and then start to rebound for Q2. We're coming towards a peak, the real estate cycle coming towards a peak, still some potential upside here. But in the second half of the real estate cycle, a couple of things tend to play out. The US dollar tends to decline. Now this goes back over 40 years of data, something that we don't have for Bitcoin, but we do have for the US dollar. We have over 200 years of data for the US home prices, or real estate as we call it here, and the economic cycle, which typically peaks around every 18 to 20 years, which is led by a land-led recession after that point. Not like what we saw in 2020. That was not a land-led recession. That was banking, it was COVID. That's the sort of thing you see in the mid-cycle. So I'm focused here on the second half of the cycle. And what happens in the second half is the US dollar declines. With the US dollar being weaker, that's generally a good sign for asset prices. And we've started to see a lot of these commodities start to head to fresh highs, in some cases new all-time highs. So second half, US dollar, I suspect it's got further to go. We've seen a rejection here in August at around 100. We would have to reevaluate our situation if the US dollar was able to consolidate above 103. That is this 50%, but I don't think that's going to happen. We've seen 3 big red months in a row and then followed by the fourth. But as one of our key signals, when you get that 3 bars in a row, that can be a very, very strong sign that you're going to see further downside. And in the case of commodities, they can take a very long time. These typically take a long time. And in the case of the US dollar, down to a 3.5-year low. We've seen a slight rally here, but I suspect we'll continue to see further downside with the tariffs that obviously Trump has put in, which is now reducing trade, less demand for the US dollar, which could potentially put some pressure onto bonds in the long term. And eventually, this is years away, the yields could start to rise even further. The long end there, the 10s and the 30 years, again, more pressure on the economy, and that starts to see things begin to unwind, especially for the 18-year cycle where you'll see the land prices start to come down. So all in all, US dollar looks like it's got further to go. Next price target for the second half of the cycle, which we're currently in, I think the US dollar is probably going to break 90. And then I've got a bit of a target somewhere between 86 and 90. This is to take out these lows. Now, this is not going to be a 2025 thing. I don't even know if it's going to be a 2026 thing. I'm looking years out here. This move from September 22, which is now 3 years on, this is how far the US dollar has come down in those 3 years. So what if we take another couple of years to get to these next price targets? I think we've still got further to go, which is in the short term could potentially be bullish for Bitcoin, other assets, like silver. We've started to see silver also climb higher. $40.68. It's overtaken Bitcoin now in the total market cap, so the largest assets in the world. And as you can see, for the end of August, a big move higher here, $40. So that was a pretty strong rise there of 10%, and then also June of nearly 10% as well. So pretty big push out of the resistance there at around $35. Why do I think this is important for Bitcoin? Well, we're starting to see a push or a move towards some of the other assets, the precious metals. We've seen new all-time high prices for gold. In August, we saw a new all-time high monthly close for gold after some consolidation here. And you're starting to see that flow out into some of the other precious metals, in particular here for silver as well. So I think the narrative is also going to continue to flow through, even if Bitcoin has struggled a little in August. Meanwhile, you saw the gains here for silver and gold. We may start to see that towards the end of the cycle. Another reason why September could be choppy until we get some clarity towards the end of the month, which essentially is what we're seeing in the price action, is of course the economic data coming out of the US. For September, they've got the unemployment claims, the job openings, the non-farm employment change, basically looking at everything to do with the employment of the economy as well. Do note the average hourly earnings have basically been up for 5 years, almost 5 years straight. There was one minor decline here in April 2021 and then a zero in March 22. So the earnings have been up this entire time, but the jobs are starting to drop off like we saw last month with the non-farm getting readjusted here in the forecast. So basically less jobs being created. Then you take it out further in the month into next week, PPI, core PPI, manufacturing, and so on until we get to the following week, which has the interest rate announcements, which everyone is very, very interested in. Now, the percentage changes here from the market have now favored the cut, still only at one cut here, down to 4.25, and we're just seeing the market begin to wait on that particular data coming out. The S&P 500 may also be in that same camp, which is a great segue to cryptocurrencies that have also been consolidating the gains to the upside. So the monthly green streak here for the total cryptocurrency market cap, which in August did finish in the red thanks to Bitcoin, but held up thanks to Ethereum, Solana, and some of the other large majors which closed up, only marginally red. But the greens to the upside, this is basically the extent of what the green months in a row have done throughout this entire bull market. You've green, 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 so 4 greens in a row met by a red to consolidate the move. Take it back to this one here. We had a double red and then 1, 2, 3, 4 months to the upside, consolidated the move, and then a final blow-off move here, 1, 2 months to the upside. And then just looking at these two here, you had another double red, and that led to our 4 months to the upside, met with a consolidation move, very similar to what happened in January. So you come out of this double red, 4 greens, consolidate it, give it a little time off, and then pumps for those last 2 months. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting ones leading to the end of the cycle, because that would be September and October, potentially a big move, a correction and then a big move. And that could take a lot of people by surprise if they're expecting the cycle to go on a lot further. But it looks quite similar to 2023 and the early part of 2025 as well, double red and then 4 to the upside. And essentially for the greens, to wrap up for 2023, or this cycle actually, into the peak, green, 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 green. So 4 green months again, which was then met by a consolidating move. So it's looking relatively good here, relatively healthy. That August had pulled back, it's consolidated some of those gains, and we may see the rest of the move to the upside. That's the total market cap, Bitcoin, everything included. This is total 3, which finished in the green. Now it closed at an equal all-time high monthly price, similar to January 2025, 1.02 trillion, August 1.02 trillion, above the strength, above the weakness, closing in strength, so well above the $950 billion. You don't want to see any closes below 910 at this stage of the cycle. It could happen. It's just going to be a lot weaker, essentially, if it did come down and start to climb back again. You know, it can still rally, but it's just a lot weaker. If it continues to consolidate here, a lot stronger for altcoins as well. So a nice move up there, which has led to many of the alts also holding up relatively well. So closing at all-time high prices doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get a major blow-off move, but it has seen more upside after those all-time high closes. Go back to December 2024, we had the all-time high close in November 2024, so we got further upside to go. We had all-time high closes in February 2021. The market kept pushing. It was a lot earlier on in the cycle, don't forget. And then we also saw it in August of 2021. So 4 years ago, a new all-time high monthly close, but that push higher was a lot less than what we saw earlier in that cycle as well. So we've seen a couple of significant pushes here. Now it's just a question of, do we see a bit of a weaker rally into a final all-time high price? Obviously, there's always the case that this could be this could have finished already, or do we see a bigger move to those highs? I'm leaning somewhere in between. I don't know if it's going to be as lackluster as the second half of the 2021 cycle, but I think these days are behind us. I don't think we're going to see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of a percent move at this later stage. I think it's somewhere in between these two at the moment. The only way that I think that could change is a significant breakdown of 3.7% for the USDT dominance. So there it is, 3.7, and the lower end is around 2.5. I think if the USDT dominance gets into this zone, 2.5 to 3.7, you're probably going to be looking at for some sort of cycle top coming in. I don't know if it's got the power to break through 2.5% this cycle. There has obviously been a lot more stable coins created. And of course, the prices have also gone up as well. The bearish case here is if we see a break of about 4.9% on the USDT dominance, overbalance in time and price, that would be met. So basically extending further than the previous rally, which is not a good thing for the bull market. It just means that there is more money flowing into stable coins now, if that was to happen, than any of the previous rallies, which is a bearish case. So it hasn't happened. Let's see if we can get rejected here at 4.7 and then start to come down through September. So we get maybe a rally higher and then a bit of a drop down, close, and then we see that for October, November, and test these lows. Ideally, for the overall bull market, big breakdown here. And that would lead to some pretty high prices for altcoins. In particular, Ethereum, Solana we'll look at. Ethereum has closed a new month, fresh high here. It goes back all the way to September 24. So basically a 12-month high, getting very close to a 12-month high. It looks like there's further to go here. My price target is for this cycle is still up around 5 to 5.3%. That's what we're looking for some sort of ETH BTC play. Therefore, potentially more upside here for Ethereum as well. It's been 4 months up already for the ETH BTC chart. The last time it did 4 months, you have to go back to 20. You only have 1, 2, 3 months up here in the cycle. We're not talking greens or reds. We're talking higher highs, higher lows. More important in some cases than the green and the red. You want to see these higher highs, higher lows, basically no breakdown of the price there. 1, 2 months up, and then there was a breakdown. 2 months up, then a breakdown. 3 months up, then a breakdown. 2 months up, breakdown. Now we got the big one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that was early on in the cycle. So 8 months up, then the breakdown. So anything forward from here, should we see pullbacks, I suspect they're going to be shorter than this move out. So this 4 months out. It hasn't happened since the early stages of the prior cycle. And every other move there, short-lived. So think about that with your Ethereum bags. Speaking of Ethereum bags, ETH abnormal bars per move. So again, the monthly thing here, August into September. I hope you're keeping record of everything here. I've gone through a lot of data. Like the content if you do find value, and of course share it with a friend as well. We are looking at Ethereum and the monthly moves here, and what potentially we are, well, at least I'm looking at with my analysis, expecting for the next coming months. Now, starting with the bullish case, there's always a possibility that we just blow up from here, take out another month to the upside. We've seen that once before in this bull market, going back to June 2022, and of course coming closer to the end of this cycle, it could seem that there is the chance that we do see that play out before Ethereum rests. So 5 months to the upside, higher highs, higher lows. And in terms of greens, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 greens. This time you're only at 2. But the thing that I note is there the energy to do it? Does the chart support it? Does the market support big moves up without any sort of consolidation? And these red arrows show the times that Ethereum has put in abnormal bars and what happens next. So here is an abnormal bar. So what happened prior? You got a 47% move met with a top. So it did go higher, but it reversed. That's a 30-day period. It reversed, came back down. Now you got a 46% move. It was met with a top, and then it came down. So you got the 46% move, top, down. And this time we're at a 48, call it 49% move. So far we've got a top. I'm not expecting that it collapses, but it could be time for some consolidation, especially when you take into account the amount of months in the move to the upside. The only time that it has extended in a very big fashion was 2021, and obviously 2017 being the early days, but in this cycle hasn't happened. Last cycle, you got to 5 months. Okay, it happened once. 8 months earlier in the cycle seems a little unlikely at this stage. Very, very big months in a row, 78%, 35%, 44%. And then you had 6 months in a row, but it really didn't do a hell of a lot. You got a 58% there, 53%, but you're trying to break out of resistance. Now, we're kind of in a different stage, especially with the timing of the move. So yes, we could say, well, it's happened once or twice here. We're now later in the cycle, so I don't want to hang my hat on hoping that we get something like the first half of the previous cycle. It has gone on quite some time. I'd rather play it cautious and just look at what's happened here, what's happened here, what's happened here, play it a little defensive, and if we get the move, sweet, get back on with the trend and keep running up to those highs. The other times you saw it was 2017, so big 7 months to the upside and also that 5 months. But in the middle of that, huge correction. 94% correction on this chart. I think it was a little more like 70-odd% correction without the slippage on the market here for Coinbase. So Ethereum, still there's some upside. It looks like it wants to consolidate as well. Solana USD also looking relatively good here. It's done pretty long moves to the upside. It's at 5 months now, into the 5th month. It did 5 months before into that January top. It did 6 months into the top, and it did 7 months into the prior top. So it could still do another month or two at this point. 2021 cycle, 6 months from a significant low to a top. This was a very big correction. 5 months from a low to a top. And you can see it on the logarithmic here. And then 4 months into the first one. So we've done 4 months. Maybe we go 5 to 7 months, which still takes the market out to October, November. So if you're taking a look at all of these time frames for the majors, Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, it seems like we definitely have to be on alert for something like an October top. Doesn't mean it's the end, but we have to be on alert from the analysis. At least that's the way I'm definitely playing the game here. So putting all of that together, what do I think is going to happen at this point for Bitcoin? Well, the low of August is only a few bucks away at 107,370. So I think we'll see a lower low for this month, which would put a swing in the monthly chart. So that's not a bad thing either, basically continuing to consolidate the gains. How and why? Well, we got rejected at the 50% level. That was on the daily here, so we can get rid of that now. That's done its job. And it wasn't able to close above the $112,000 for at least 2 days in a row. Typically, I like to see 3 days. So that was the previous low, again showing more weakness. So that's almost done its job. We'll extend that out a little further. We've overbalanced in price. It's gone down further than the previous move here. So I don't believe we're going to see a new all-time high in September. Happy to be wrong on that, but I think this is going to take a little bit longer to consolidate. So the first thing is we'll probably see more downside, and the double dip signal that Michael has shown on his channel suggests if you get 3 red weeks, then there is a very high probability that you're going to see another push lower. It doesn't mean the following week, which is the current week we're in, we could see a rally like this and then a push lower. So here are 3 red weeks, then a rally, then a move down. We've also seen 3 red weeks at the previous highs in early 2024. There's 1, 2, 3, at least 3 red weeks. There was a slight rally, another push lower. The other thing I looked at was how much lower can it go? Typically, it takes out the low of the 3rd week. Then there was another rally, 1, 2, 3 weeks down. There is the rally. It took out the low. And another couple of examples, you go back to 2023, 1, 2, 3 red weeks. There's a rally, and then it dumps down. 1, 2, 3 red weeks. It also broke lower and then went higher. There is this example. There's another 3, rallied, went lower. Now here is an example where it had 3 red weeks, did not go lower, and then rallied higher. So it's not we're not looking for 100% hit rate signals. And in this case, it didn't do it. That was the banking crisis low. That was where everyone thought there was going to be a recession. The world was imploding, game over. It didn't happen, of course. And we talked about that on the channel. Why? In particular, the 18-year cycle, big rally from that point. So what we've seen now, 3 red weeks, maybe we do see this rally. Maybe it's like a minor suckers rally. And then we get a double dip for September. And then we start to see it close higher. And for the month of September, for a green month, all it has to do now is basically close above 108,250 bucks, or a round number. So looking for closes above 108,000, that should get us into the green, even if we saw some downside here to test some key 50% levels like the 99 to 100K, especially after hitting our price target of 107. So that was a double top, 150% price target, 107.5. And we've got a couple of levels down here around 99 to 102. So we test or rally, test, push back higher, end in the green for September. And then hopefully things are still on track there for October, November, and start to push higher. I've talked about price targets to the upside. I'll leave that for another video. This one's gone on long enough. So like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Let me know in the comment section what you think for September. Things are getting very, very interesting right now with Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, commodities, like I've discussed with silver, the US dollar, and of course the stock markets as well. It seems like we're very much getting to a peak for the US home prices and economy. So don't go anywhere. I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Till then, take care and peace out.